Chapter 14. The Confrontation. I left my father's office with a determined heart and a mind racing with possibilities. I had made my choice, and there was no turning back now. I needed to confront Adrian and find out what he was truly planning, and I would do it on my own terms. As I drove toward his penthouse, the city lights blurred past me, each one a reminder of the stakes involved. I was stepping into the lion's den, and I had to be ready for whatever awaited me inside. When I arrived, it took a moment to steady my breath before I entered. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and I could feel the familiar energy crackling in the air as I stepped off the elevator. Adrian was waiting for me, his expression unreadable as I walked into the room. "Juliet," he said, his tone cool, but there was an undercurrent of something else. Curiosity, maybe, or anticipation. "Adrian," I replied, crossing my arms defiantly. "We need to talk." "About?" he asked, feigning nonchalance as he leaned against the bar. "About Sterling and what you're planning," I said, cutting straight to the point. "I just found out my father knows about your move against us, and he wants to hit back." His eyebrows lifted, a flicker of amusement dancing in his eyes. "So your father has finally decided to act? I'm impressed." "Don't play games with me, Adrian," I warned, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "This isn't just a game for either of us anymore. I need to know what your plans are." He stepped closer, a hint of challenge in his gaze. "Why do you care? You're part of my plan now. You should be focusing on how we can work together to neutralize our enemies." "I care because I won't let you destroy everything my family has worked for," I shot back, my heart racing. "If you think I'm going to stand idly by while you plot against my father, you're mistaken." Adrian's expression darkened, and for a moment, I saw the true depth of his ambition. "This isn't about your father, Juliet. This is about power, our power, and if you want to succeed, you need to understand the bigger picture." "The bigger picture," I echoed, incredulous. "All I see is you trying to crush my family's legacy to satisfy your own desires." "Maybe," he admitted, his voice low. "But the world we live in is ruthless, Juliet. You can't afford to be sentimental. You have to fight for what you want." I took a step back, shaken by the intensity of his words. "I refuse to become a part of your vengeance, Adrian. I'm not interested in this twisted power play." Adrian's eyes narrowed, and he stepped closer, his voice a low growl. "You're already in this, whether you like it or not. You made your choice when you decided to stay, and now you need to commit." I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, anger and confusion swirling inside me. "You think I'm going to follow you blindly? I'm not a pawn in your game." "Then what do you want?" Adrian challenged, crossing his arms, the intensity in his gaze daring me to make a choice. I could feel the heat between us, the tension that had been simmering for weeks, waiting to explode. My pulse raced, my body thrumming with an energy that demanded release. The weight of everything, our plans, our partnership, our unspoken desires, hung in the air, thick and suffocating. But in that moment, all I wanted was him. "I want to take control," I whispered, my voice low but fierce. And with that, I pushed him hard against the wall, my body pressing against his with a force that surprised even me. I heard his breath hitch, saw the flicker of surprise in his eyes. They quickly melted into something darker, something hungrier. Our eyes locked, and I felt the fire inside me ignite. I knew what I wanted, and I was about to take it, no matter what the cost. Without another word, I crashed my lips against his, the kiss raw, urgent, and filled with the heat we'd both been holding back. His arms wrapped around me instantly, pulling me even closer, his body responding to mine with an intensity that sent a surge of electricity through me. I tangled my fingers in his hair, tugging slightly as I deepened the kiss, pouring everything into it, my frustration, my desire, my need for control. Adrian groaned into my mouth, the sound sending a thrill down my spine as his hands roamed over my back, exploring every curve, every inch of me. But I wasn't ready to let him take over. Not yet. I pushed harder against him, pinning him to the wall as my lips moved hungrily against his. My hand slid down to his chest, feeling the firm muscles beneath his shirt. and I pressed my body against his in a way that left no space between us. The friction, the heat, it was intoxicating. Adrian's breath was ragged as I broke the kiss, trailing my lips down his jawline, his neck. I could feel his pulse pounding beneath my lips, feel the way his body reacted to every touch. He groaned again, his hands gripping my waist tightly as I took control, claiming him with a confidence I hadn't known I possessed. "Juliet," he gasped, his voice rough, filled with desire and need. But I didn't slow down. I wanted more. I needed more. I pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, my breath coming fast and heavy. His gaze was dark, filled with hunger, and I could see the war raging inside him, the desire to let me take control, and the equally strong urge to dominate me in return. "Not yet," I thought, as I pressed my lips to his again, harder this time, demanding more from him. His hand slid down to my hips, pulling me even closer, and I felt the hardness of his body against mine, the evidence of his need, his desire, and it only fueled the fire inside me. My hands moved to the buttons of his shirt, and I tore it open with a quick, impatient motion. His bare chest was firm and hot under my fingertips, and I couldn't resist trailing my hands over his skin, feeling every muscle, every inch of him. He shuddered under my touch, his breath coming in ragged gasps as I took my time, savoring the power I had over him. But Adrian wasn't the type to stay passive for long. In one swift motion, he grabbed my hips and spun us around, pinning me against the wall with a force that sent a jolt of pleasure through me. His mouth crashed against mine again, this time with a raw, untamed hunger that matched my own. He wasn't holding back anymore. His hands were everywhere, on my waist, sliding up my back, gripping my thighs. The roughness of his touch only heightened the intensity, and I moaned against his lips, arching into him as his hands explored my body with an urgency that made my heart race. "You want control?" he growled against my lips, his voice thick with desire. "Then take it." I didn't need any more encouragement. I grabbed the back of his neck, pulling him into another deep, bruising kiss as I pushed him toward the bed. He stumbled slightly, his breath ragged as I shoved him down onto the mattress, straddling him without hesitation. For a moment, I just looked at him, his chest rising and falling rapidly, his eyes dark and filled with heat. The power surged through me again, and I reveled in it, feeling the control, the dominance. "You like this, don't you?" I whispered, my voice dripping with seduction as I leaned down, my lips brushing against his ear. "You like it when I'm in control." Adrian groaned, his hands gripping my hips tightly. "You have no idea," he growled, his voice thick with need. I smirked, feeling a thrill shoot through me as I leaned in to kiss him again, my hands roaming over his chest, his stomach feeling every inch of him beneath me. The heat between us was palpable, and I could feel the tension building, threatening to snap at any moment. His hands slid under my shirt, his fingers exploring the soft skin of my back, sending shivers of pleasure through me. I gasped as his hands roamed higher, teasing, driving me wild with need, but I wasn't ready to let him take control again. I leaned down, pressing my lips to his neck, his collarbone, savoring the way he shuddered beneath me. Every touch, every kiss was a claim, a reminder that I was the one in control, that I was the one driving him mad with desire. Adrian's breathing grew heavier, his hands gripping my hips as I moved against him, the friction between us almost unbearable. I could feel his desire, feel the way his body responded to mine, and it only made me want more. But just as I felt myself losing control, felt the intensity of the moment sweeping me away, I stopped. Adrian groaned, his hands tightening on my hips as I pulled back slightly, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. "Juliet," he whispered, his voice filled with a mixture of frustration and need. I leaned down, pressing my lips to his ear, my breath hot against his skin. "Not yet," I whispered, my voice thick with desire. "We're not done playing." He shuddered beneath me, his breath coming fast as I slowly pulled away, leaving both of us gasping, breathless, the heat of the moment still lingering in the air. We lay there for a moment, the intensity of what had just happened hanging between us, both of us struggling to catch our breath. Finally, Adrian chuckled, his voice low and hoarse. "You're going to drive me insane." I smiled, feeling the heat still coursing through me as I looked down at him, his chest rising and falling rapidly. "That's the plan." We both knew that this was only the beginning. The tension, the desire, the fire between us. It wasn't going away anytime soon. But for now, we lay together, breathless, tangled in each other's arms, knowing that the next time, neither of us would be able to hold back. The game we were playing was dangerous, but it was a game we both wanted to win. That night, I tossed and turned, the weight of my decision pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. Adrian was starting to get under my skin in ways I had never anticipated. He was pushing past boundaries I had set for myself, touching parts of me, physically and emotionally, that I swore no man would ever reach. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, the push and pull between control and surrender, between desire and doubt. Sitting up in bed, I rubbed my temples, trying to clear my mind. Outside, the soft patter of rain against my window became more insistent, matching the rhythm of my racing thoughts. A quick flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed by a low rumble of thunder in the distance. There was a storm coming, both physically and metaphorically, and if I was going to succeed in navigating the treacherous waters ahead, I needed to keep my wits about me. As the rain intensified, I heard a soft tapping at my bedroom door, breaking through my thoughts. I ran my fingers through my hair, gathering my composure. "Come in!" I called out, my voice quieter than I intended. The door creaked open, and to my surprise, my mother entered, her face warm and gentle, despite the late hour. She was dressed in a soft robe, her hair slightly tousled from sleep, yet her eyes held a brightness, an awareness that told me she had been awake and worrying, just as I had been. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft but serious. I gave her a small smile, scooting over on the bed to make space for her. "Of course," I said, my curiosity piqued by the urgency in her tone. As she closed the door behind her and sat beside me on the bed, I noticed the familiar lines of concern etched into her face, deeper than I'd seen before. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of the rain on the window filled the silence, its rhythm almost soothing, yet the tension in the air was unmistakable. I knew this wasn't just a casual late-night conversation. "You've been struggling, haven't you?" she finally said, her eyes searching mine. "About Adrian, about the decisions you're facing." I nodded, sighing as I leaned back against the headboard. "It's all so much, Mom. The merger with Adrian, what it could mean for the family. I can't shake the feeling that I'm on the verge of making the wrong decision." She reached out, taking my hand in hers, her touch warm and reassuring. "I know how hard this is for you. But Juliet, the reality is, we're running out of time." I frowned, confusion washing over me. "What do you mean?" Her eyes softened, but there was a sadness there, something I hadn't seen before. "Your father, he's not doing well." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I sat up straighter, the gravity of her statement sinking in. What do you mean, he's not doing well? He didn't tell me." "He didn't want to worry you," she interrupted gently, squeezing my hand. "He's been sick for a while now, but he's been keeping it from you. For most people. It's getting worse, Juliet. The doctors don't think he'll last the year." I felt the air leave my lungs, my heart pounding in my chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" She sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "Your father wanted to protect you. He didn't want this burden on your shoulders while you were dealing with everything else. But now, with everything that's happening with the company, with Adrian, we don't have the luxury of waiting any longer." I blinked, trying to process the weight of what she was saying. My father was dying, and I had no idea. "And the merger with Adrian?" I asked, my voice small, unsure. "That's part of it," she said, her tone growing more serious. "Your father has been holding the company together, but once he's gone, there's no one left to take over. The board will swoop in, and they'll tear everything apart. We need someone strong, someone with the resources to keep everything intact. Adrian, I whispered, the realization sinking in. She nodded. Your father believes that if you marry Adrian, if you merge our family with his, he'll be able to step in and protect what your father has built. And honestly, Juliet, I agree with him. My chest tightened, the weight of her words pressing down on me like a vice. You want me to marry him? To hand over control to him? She shook her head, her expression softening. No, not hand over control. Adrian has the power, the influence, to protect our legacy. But you, Juliet, you're the heart of this family. You'll keep everything together. I looked away, staring out the window as the rain continued to pour. The flashes of lightning were becoming more frequent now, the thunder louder, closer. The storm was almost here. I don't know if I can trust him, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother sighed, reaching out to gently touch my arm. I can't tell you whether to trust him or not. Only you can decide that. But I do know this. Adrian is powerful, and he's smart. He sees your strength, Juliet. That's why he's drawn to you. Together, you could build something incredible. Something that will outlast all of us. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle deep within me. I had been fighting this. Fighting Adrian, fighting the idea of giving up control. But if my father was sick, if our family's legacy was truly at risk, maybe I didn't have the time I thought I had. And if I don't do this? I asked, my voice trembling. Her eyes grew sad, and she gave me a small, rueful smile. Then we'll lose everything. The company, the influence, everything your father worked for. I sat there, staring at the rain, feeling the storm outside reflect the turmoil inside me. I had spent so much time fighting for control, for independence, but now, faced with the reality of my father's illness, with the looming threat of losing everything, maybe Adrian wasn't just a risk. Maybe he was the solution. I don't know what to do, I whispered, feeling the tears prick the corners of my eyes. My mother wrapped her arm around me, pulling me close. It's okay to be scared, Juliet. You don't have to have all the answers right now. But whatever decision you make, I know you'll do it with the best intentions. I trust you. We sat like that for a long time, my head resting on her shoulder as we listened to the rain. The room was dark, illuminated only by the occasional flash of lightning. But there was a warmth between us, a sense of shared understanding that soothed some of the tension in my chest. I just wish we had more time, I murmured. She kissed the top of my head gently, her voice soft. So do I. But life doesn't always give us the time we want. We talked quietly for the rest of the night, discussing the future, the possibilities, what a merger with Adrian could mean for the family. The conversation was heavy but necessary, and by the time dawn began to break, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The decision was mine to make, and while the weight of it felt immense, I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. As the first light of morning crept into the room, my mother kissed my forehead, her hand resting gently on my cheek. Whatever happens, Juliet, I'll be here for you. I nodded, my heart full of gratitude and love for this woman who had always stood by me, no matter how difficult things had become. She stood up, smoothing her robe before making her way to the door. Rest, my darling. You'll need your strength for the decisions ahead. With that, she left, closing the door softly behind her, leaving me alone with my thoughts, the remnants of the storm still echoing in the distance. I lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything that had been said. My father was sick. My family needed saving. And Adrian. He was at the center of it all. As the dawn light spilled through the window, I realized that my decision had already been made. Now, I just needed to have the courage to follow through. Reaching for the phone, I hit the number I was dreading. As the voice on the other end came alive, I could only say one thing. We're out of time. Are you ready to make our move?